for joining us this holiday weekend. Congress votes to decide the new Speaker of the House next week. That vote could be decided by the slimmest GOP majority in modern history. And Congressman Mike Johnson appears to be in an increasingly untenable position to hold on to the gavel after his role in passing a government funding bill this month, angering some of his caucus who are now openly calling for a new speaker while Trump's been silent on the matter. How do you expect your Republican colleagues to proceed, Congresswoman?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on, Reverend Al. And they are in a tizzy because they know they can't control. As everybody witnessed right before we left Congress, almost 40 some of the Republicans voted against what the Republicans want because they wanted to, of course, raise the debt ceiling. They're not in alignment with their speaker. We know before that by the time they got through 4 days, 15 rounds of votes, Democrats were consistent with Hakeem Jeffries, and they were all over the place. And right now, they have that one-party vote rule that they can vacate the speaker's seat. So who knows what they're going to do? They're having trouble governing. They're probably waiting on President-elect Musk to call Trump and tell them what to do. Right now, they don't know who's running the government, whether it is on our debt ceiling, whether it is on the unfinished business that we have to do in the upcoming March months. They cannot govern, and Democrats are on point. We have 200, when you think of it, 215 Democrats aligned with leader Hakeem Jeffries, ready to do the people's work. They're in trouble.
Now, staying with the debt fight, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is warning this weekend that the U.S. could reach its debt ceiling as soon as January 14th. And she's calling on Congress to either increase or suspend the limit or run the risk of a default once the Treasury exhausts its extraordinary measures to pay the government's bills. About 36 conservative Republicans joined House Democrats in rejecting Trump's demand that the debt ceiling be abolished during this month's spending fight. What are you expecting from your GOP colleagues on this issue when Congress returns, and how should Democrats respond?
Reverend Al, I don't think they're going to move very far because we know that we are sitting at about $36 trillion. We know the debt ceiling has been set at about $31.4 trillion. We know that 90 times over the 20th century, we have been faced with this issue. It has been suspended until, as you mentioned, January the 2nd. I think that we will do what we can do best to protect the American citizens. You know, they're thinking about billionaires. He's even suggesting a name of a South Carolina billionaire to take Janet Yellen's place. We will stand firm and we will do what's best for the debt ceiling, but most importantly, what's best for consumers and our constituents.
Earlier this month, your caucus elected Virginia Congressman Jerry Connolly to be the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, prompting criticism from some Democrats who wanted a younger member in the post in Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who also competed for the job. Connolly, a senior member of the committee, is 74, Ocasio-Cortez is 35, and a rising progressive star. The party is still debating on whether it needs to get younger, more centrist, or more liberal, or if it should work with the next administration or fight it. As you vie for the DNC vice chair, and we know the DNC has to deal with where it goes from here. I was in Chicago for Christmas evening, the night of Christmas, with Reverend Jesse Jackson. And a lot of people in Chicago telling me they want to see his son, Congressman Jonathan Jackson, run for chair. Where do you see the future going and the direction going of the party as you run for vice chair?
I think you need a combination, whether it is the DNC, and yes, I'm running for DNC Vice Chair of Civic Engagement and Voter Participation, because I think while we have great candidates, I have an unmatched record chairing the Congressional Black Caucus, being in the State House as the first Democratic female to deliver the majority, marching with you and other civil rights leaders, putting together civic participation and engagement in all areas, especially voting rights. But when you look at what we just did, whether it was AOC or Jerry Connolly, we picked the best to bid. AOC did a great job. And I think as she moves forward along with others, we have a great blend. We elected a lot of younger people over some of our senior, but you can't have everyone to be young or everyone to be senior. It's the combination. It is the experience that we have to remember. It is also making sure that you do the other things. Do you support other members? Do you pay your dues? And so when I looked at it overall, I made sure that we voted for a person that met all of those standards, not just one. So I think that the DNC is going to be on a great foot. We have a lot to build on from what Jamie did as the DNC chair, but we need new ideas. We need people who are open to galvanizing and mobilizing everybody, not just one sector of the Democratic Party. And I think you're going to see that with Leader Hakeem Jeffries in Congress. I think you're going to see that with the next slate of DNC officers. And I plan to put my best foot forward because I do have a platform, and that's what we're running on. A platform of change, a platform of consistency, a platform of doing what you've talked about in Jesse Jackson, along with some of the younger folks who are on the ground. Joteka, Edie, put together a plan that brought Black men, Black women, white men, LGBTQ, and everybody on a call telling people to get out and vote. So I want to bring a lot of that to the table with the DNC and also be able to travel the country as I've done in the past as the CBC chair and also being one of the Harris's folks.
Now, I want to talk to you about that, the DNC race from the standpoint of race. As you stated, you chaired the Congressional Black Caucus. You worked with all of us in the civil rights community very closely. And the black vote was central to the Democrats' efforts in the past election cycle. Still, you have those who claim identity politics cost the party all three branches, and those that say Democrats didn't embrace diversity enough. Both sides are being argued. What should the party's approach be moving forward, in your view?
I think we have to make sure that we clear that up with our messaging. We need a platform with those individuals from the top down officers who are pledging that they will be inclusive. I think that we have to make sure that people do not abandon diversity and equity. We can't have a party that's one-sided, and that's not just race and gender and ethnicity. It is thought, it is demographics, and I plan to be a part and will work with anybody that won't close out people. And that's why my plan is count us in plan. It's not just those who are leading, it's those that are following, it's those who are on the ground, and it's also people like yourself, Reverend Al. It's the civil rights leaders who don't have a vote. We can't leave them outside. We have to galvanize them. We can't be afraid to embrace those who are governors and mayors and members of Congress and city leaders. If we're going to get this right, and we have 4 years to do it, we better have a plan that doesn't leave anybody behind, a plan that the person can come in ready to go with a track record of successfully leading and mobilizing. It's not just the title you've had, it's what you have delivered and what you've done. And I believe I've worked with all groups, ground leaders, civil rights leaders, union and labor and religious leaders to make a difference. And that's what I'm going to bring to the table.
Out of time, but before I let you go, I'd like to get your comment on the disturbing death of New York State inmate Robert Brooks, whose beating by state correction officers earlier this month was captured on body cam footage released this weekend by New York Attorney General Tish James, and the governor has stepped in. I warn the audience the footage is violent, showing officers punching and kicking Brooks while he's handcuffed to a prison bed. Brooks died in the hospital the next day. James and the governor, Kathy Hochul, and state correction officials have taken action. 14 workers of that prison has been fired. The State Correctional Officers Union has condemned the attack, calling it incomprehensible. What are your thoughts on this tragedy? I remember coming to your district, preaching the funeral of a victim of a police brutality attack. What are your thoughts, Congresswoman, as you see these continual things?
Reverend Al, I joined all of them. This was one of the hardest things I've had to watch, somebody laying there on a metal hospital bed being beaten and then subsequently to die. Too bad we can't legislate civility and we can't legislate intelligence and police and prison guards controls, but we did pass a bill on accountability. And what I am saying, whether it is the body cameras or putting more cameras around to protect those who are supposed to be protected by those who are guarding them, we have to have more accountability. And we have to make sure we make a point that those people are held accountable. No pat on the back. You know, this man has lost his life, 40-some years old. He deserved better treatment. And we have to stand with the system to make sure that there are consequences from the top down when they don't follow their own systems, when we don't have accountability. And we have a bill that Lucy McBath introduced with Congressman Armstrong to do just that, to have oversight. We already passed the bill 2 years ago to make sure that we had cameras in those prisons. So we've got to do more because what we've done is not working and is not acceptable.
All right. Thank you, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty. Joining